25 years already. It has all begun with the benediction of Metropolitan Favorite of Minsk, and in Belarus, in Russia, in Ukraine, the books of Metropolitan Antony in Russian are like done by my father, Dmitry Strotsev, and some other people. So he's the foundation, the Metropolitan Antony of Surosh Foundation. So, and this will be the story about the organizations and the people. So the first, there is an organization, foundation of Metropolitan Antony of Surosh, and so on. But this foundation, this organization, it works, it does something because of some people, not because some people, have their jobs there, and that's just their job to promote Metropolitan Antony. No, these are those people who were moved, impressed, maybe shocked, or found some joy in this person, in Metropolitan Antony, and who dedicate their love and their work to this name. Well, for someone, it's really a saint that waits for official veneration, but that's not the most important thing. It's someone that they love, they know. And my father has never known Metropolitan Antony. Me too. And of course, there are always some networks of such people who are interested with someone. So, for example, we have started to visit a very special place, Summer Theological Institute of Kiev. But it's not actually in Kiev, it's in a village next to Kiev, like 40 minutes by bus. And I have been there for 9 years already. So every summer there is this summer school of theology, but it doesn't mean that everything is about theology. There are many speakers, many lectures. It's about theology, philosophy, history, cinema, society, science, even about physics, about astronomy. Well, because everything is related. But mostly it's a theological summer school attached to one parish. So there is a church, Orthodox church, and there are people who come from Ukraine, from some other countries, and from France, from America sometimes. It's a very special place. And there we had a friend. We had two friends who know Metropolitan Antony personally, who have known him. It's Konstantin Segov, one publisher, editor, who organizes this summer school, and Alexander Filonenko. Alexander Filonenko is a philosopher from Kharkov, who has also been a friend of Metropolitan Antony. He's a pupil, so to say. And my father, this Konstantin Filonenko, some other people, they have known each other for some time, and they have become friends. Why? Because they have all had one other friend, who is Metropolitan Antony. Not necessarily a personal friend, but someone that makes them alive. And then there were some meetings, some more encounters, as Yana, I think, says. The encounter is the most important word for Metropolitan Antony. So, at one moment we have met some Italian Catholic people who are in love with this Eastern Christianity, with Eastern European, with Russian Christianity, with the Orthodox Church, and they are the members of one Catholic movement, Communione e Liberazione, Communion and Liberation. It's the name of this big community in Italy, but also in other countries. And every year it organizes one big festival. And when I say big, it's like really big. It's one of the biggest cultural festivals in Europe. So it means that during 1 week, there is up to 1 million visitors. Not everybody makes part of communion liberation. Of course, there are people from all over the world and all over the Italy because who come just because they are interested with what people propose there. And what do they propose? So there are of course concerts, there are encounters with some famous people and so on, music, and it's all done by Christians, done by Catholics. And for I think 30 years already, there are always some exhibitions dedicated to every year to Eastern Christianity, to Orthodox Church, to Russian Christianity, to Greek Christianity, to the icons, to Solovyov, to Dostoevsky, to new martyrs, and so on. Why? Because in Italy, beginning from the 60s, from the 70s, there were some groups of people who started to do two things: help those Christians in the Soviet Union who couldn't publish books, who couldn't speak about their problems, their sufferings, and so they were always in contact with the Soviet Catholic, Soviet Orthodox Christians. That was one part of the job of these communities, to help those people who suffer, because the church was persecuted. It was, of course, not the time of like 30s, 40s, but still it was a time when some people were sent to psychiatrical hospitals because they were like preachers, Protestant preachers, Orthodox preachers. And on the other side, they were giving this testimony about this experience in their country, in Italy, in Italian language. They started to translate, to publish Solzhenitsyn, for example, in Italian and so on, because Italy and Europe hasn't really known about what has happened to church in Soviet Union. Well, there was some information, but people didn't know this experience. And it was only in the 70s that Gulag Archipelago was published in French, in Italian, and so on. So it was mostly the same thing that Metropolitan Antony was doing in England, where he was this given this testimony about the Orthodox Christianity in England, in English. And at the same time, he often came to Russia, to Belarus, he was in Minsk, and met people here. So in Italy there was also this community. It was called Russia Christian, like Christian Russia, but it was not also only about like Russia. It was mostly about this Orthodox world, so to say. That was their interest. And the founder of this community was the Catholic priest Roman Ascalfi, that I had a pleasure to meet. I think that it's also a saint in some way. And well, he came to USSR in the 60s. He came even to Minsk in the 60s, and well, he was given gospels and so on. So, and these people come to the festival of this big community every summer, and they make these exhibitions. So they make these exhibitions, and what does it mean? It doesn't only mean that there are some stands, photos, and people come and look at them themselves. Well, they can, but there are always people who learn about this topic, some students, some volunteers, and who explain, who tell about it. And so that's how they learn themselves. For example, there is an exhibition about the icons in the 80s or in the 90s, and Italian students learn about Eastern icons, and they tell other Italian guests about it. And at some moment, those people who organize these exhibitions have thought, well, can we invite those people from Ukraine, from Russia, from Belarus, from other countries, to speak about their experience themselves? Because, well, we can always speak about them. And at some time when there was border, when there was political isolation, it was impossible to invite those people, but now we can. And they started to do it. And mostly it has begun with Saint Tikhon Institute in Moscow. I think many of you know it, Orthodox Institute of Saint Tikhon. And its students, many of them learn Italian, those philological students, but not only, have started to come to these exhibitions and work with the Italian students. And first it was an exhibition about Dostoevsky, I think, and then in 2013 it was an exhibition about new martyrs. And I was there for the first time, and it has all begun for me with this exhibition about the new martyrs. It was very touching.
Do you all understand what martyrs mean?
New martyrs, new confessors. Yes. It was about the experience of the Russian Orthodox Church in the 20th century. And then in 2015, this festival has once again made this proposition to make something, to make some exhibition. And well, it's interesting that those people didn't give an order, even in the sense that order as a zakaz. So they didn't ask for some topic. They just said, well, tell us about something that you want to tell us. Tell us about something that is dear to you. And there was among those people who were invited, there was a discussion what topic to choose. And in this situation of 2015, the war in Ukraine begins. Some big crisis begins. Some people who were friends yesterday have a very difficult relations now, and so on. Some people decided to speak about Metropolitan Antony. Well, because for many of us, many of those who came, he was someone who was like a light in the darkness, really, because it was a very hard situation at that time. And this exhibition was made, and in summer 2015, it has met like 20,000 visitors. It's hard to explain what it was, because it's better to show a video about how it looked like, because it was like a really rather big space. But of course it was a big project. It was a designer who made this design, those people who came, it was all complicated, but what was the most important thing? It was that 80, at least, yes, I think 80 persons from Italy, so Italian students, and from Ukraine, Belarus, and from Russia have come, and they worked together for a week in this exhibition, telling the life of Metropolitan Antony just as Jana has done last time. So they were speaking about him. Most of them, like all of them, have never known him, have never seen him. But for example, Filoninka or Konstantin Sigov, there were some people who knew him, but the exhibition was done by the young people, those who learn in school, those students, in different languages. And there are many miracles, because people who come to this exhibition, they don't know who it is. They don't know who is Metropolitan Antony, some bearded monk, someone. But 20,000 people have come. And it's not only because the festival is big, it's also because for this at least 30 years that this festival does these exhibitions about the Orthodox Church, it has like prepared this attention. It has prepared this audience that is interested in this, and that is like open to it, and those people who are attentive to this proposition, without any like aim of like becoming Orthodox or inviting Orthodox to make them Catholic. I don't know. No, absolutely differently. It was really a story about a Christian, a story about a saint in some way, but with no proclamations, that has united lots of people in a very hard situation. There was an Orthodox bishop from Ukraine. He has died sadly last year, and some priests, and there were just many students and so on. And when this exhibition has finished, and when we have all become friends, and those who knew each other before have become real friends, and some people have met for the first time. The only question was, well, what's next? What's to the next? And the idea was to make a mobile version, mobile format. And it's really not so hard. You know, you just print the stands, and they are put into these small boxes, and then you can bring them everywhere you want. In fact, but the most important thing is that it's not a project. It's not like a project to earn money or to tell someone that we have done this, we have done that. It's always how does this exhibition live? It's always something that people invite, something personal. When somebody wants to bring it, somebody wants to do it, and well, for a year at least, it was forgotten. But then we have actually done it, and it was not so easy to make this next step. And then the travelings have begun, and well, it's also a very long story and full of funny moments and beautiful moments and miracles. And for the first time, it was done in Minsk, because there is one small festival that I can say we because I am also one of those who organize. We try to organize more or less looking at this exhibition festival in Italy, in Rimini. Well, we're not trying to imitate its scale because it's very big and not at all, but just a small festival where different topics are discussed, about art, about history, but with a Christian approach. But it's not something done by a Catholic or Orthodox diocese. It's just a cultural event. Well, my father is an editor, and some other people are just in Minsk are organizing it. First time, it has already happened for 4 years, and and always some priests come from Catholic side, from Orthodox side. Some friends come from France and Italy, from Ukraine and Russia. It's not very big, and it's called Pomezhye, so borderland, like Belarus as this Pomezhye between east and west, north and south, and so on. And in 2016, I think, yes, we have done this festival for first time or second time, and our small exhibition about Metropolitan Antony was shown in Republic Palace. Well, how it's called, because well, I'm joking, not in its palace itself, but underneath there is a small gallery, the gallery of University of Culture. So, and there it was, and there were some choirs who sang liturgical songs, and there were excursions. There were these guided tours. So it meant that the exhibition works the same way. Those who came there or those who didn't come there, they were speaking about Metropolitan Antony to anybody who comes. And then something started. People started to invite it. People started to ask to show it in their city, and it has already been, well, it was a long way. I have been in some of these places, in some of them I have not been. It was shown in Kiev, in Odessa, in Grodno, in Gomel, in Baranovichi. It was great. In Moscow 2 times, in St. Petersburg, in Pskov. It was also strange and great, and in Kazakhstan, in Almaty or in Astana. I don't know. I didn't come, but to many of these places I have come. Well, I had a gap year between my university and this master studies. I was free to go anywhere I go. The most often, it was my father who and me and some other friends who were just in a van, in a car with this exhibition. We have come there. Sometimes it was in a library. Sometimes it was in a church. Sometimes it was even in the cathedral, in the church itself, or in some parish house. In Kazakhstan, it was Catholic bishop who has invited. In Odessa, no. In Odessa, it was Orthodox bishop who invited and gave money and so. and prepared some food. And well, at some moment, these travelings have not stopped, but there was a pause because I was already studying abroad, so I couldn't participate in it so much. And well, it's natural. But at some moment, something else has happened. England. Well, and the most important thing about England is to know how has it come to England? Who has invited it to England? How has it happened? Well, Metropolitan Антонии Сурожском was brought up in France, studied in France, in Paris, was at war in France, and after the war, as Jana has said a little bit, I think, he was invited to England. By whom? In England, there was an organization. Well, once again, we speak about organizations and people. And the organization was called the Fellowship of St. Alban and Sergius. St. Alban is the English saint of the first centuries, the first English martyr, and St. Sergius of Radonezh, he is here. He's like the greatest Russian saint. And in the 20s, those Russian emigrants and the Anglicans have organized this fellowship to know each other, to make some dialogue between the Orthodox and the Anglican Church. Because at that time there was even an idea that they can reunite. Well, they had many things in common. Now it's more complicated. And one of those who took part was Father Sergei Bulgakov. Well, and there was this organization in England. It was making its journal, some conferences, well, everything that the organization does. And at some moment they had a parish, a small church. And in England, the Orthodox Church was very small. Well, there was Greek Orthodox Church, Greeks that were a little bit isolated. They were a little bit by themselves. And the Russian, or rather of the Russian tradition, was very small. And well, there was this parish of the Fellowship of St. Alban and Sergius. And